Hi, I'm Becky Sims and welcome to Behind the Future, the podcast from Aspiration Digital. We're here to unlock digital careers, one conversation at a time. On each episode, I'll be joined by a student co-host. We'll be interviewing amazing people from across the industry to learn about how they got started in their career and what it is that they do. Let's dive in to find out the secrets to their success. Well, that was fun with Tom, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He's such an interesting person. I think he's had such an interesting route into what he's doing now. What was most impactful for you?
Yeah, I think when he spoke about his experiences, him going through a mental breakdown and things like that was really inspiring, because there's a lot of people out there who are like going through stress like my age as well, with things like exams and stuff. And he spoke about the importance of like reaching out and talking to people and like how that helps people as well. And he focuses more on people more than monetary values when it comes to businesses. Like, he cares more about people more than the business, which I think is really good, because I think when it comes to the businesses, it's more about people more than the money.
Yeah. And the thing is, when you focus on people, the money tends to follow. Because people are the heart of every business. So I guess with that, let's let you dive into the episode.
Hi, I'm Tom, and I'm taking you behind the future.
Welcome to another episode of Behind the Future. My co-host today is the fabulous Ruhan. Ruhan, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Ruhan, and I'm a Year 12 student currently studying Sociology, Media and Politics.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. Excited to see what questions you're going to ask.
Yeah.
And we have the fantastic Tom Wilson with us. Tom, tell us a bit about yourself.
So I am now an agency advisor, but for the 20 years nearly preceding that, I worked my way up through a full service media and marketing agency. I started there when I was 24 and left as a director about 18 months ago. I was fortunate enough to be given all kinds of opportunities to solve problems and fix things and build things, change things as we evolved that company. When I started, there was 5 of us, and at our peak, we were over 200 employees. And my job was usually to sort of roll around and fix things when departments either weren't working or we were starting brand new things. So I have a unique, sort of very broad and very generalist experience of working in and amongst agencies.
Wow, we've got a lot to unpick there. Amazing. I'm going to hand over to Ruhan for our first question.
Yeah, so when did you realise that agency advising was like your path and like that's what you wanted to do?
So I finished at What's Possible Group. We had a sort of, it was an interesting journey. It was almost forced upon me a little bit. I'd always assumed that I'd go into consultancy because you want to get into something where the responsibilities of that many people. We at that point we had a big agency. There was sort of 200 odd of us, and there's a lot of responsibility that goes with that. And I wanted a bit of a change, but we had to change tactic on What's Possible Group, and I was one of about 80 of us that ended up getting made redundant at that point. And then I went back to the job market at that point, and because my career had been so varied and so strange almost to a lot of employers, I found it quite difficult to get a job. And then I started chatting to a few people. I chatted to a mate of mine, and he went, "Oh, can you help me with this?" And I started helping him with something he was doing around a growth strategy, and I was talking to someone else who needed some help with their team. And then I kind of just sort of fell into it a little bit, and then I thought, actually, you know what, I'm going to give this a go. So yeah, I ended up setting my own business and then building up a client list, and now I work with agencies of all different shapes and sizes. So by accident, I guess, was the answer to your question.
The short answer.
The short answer was by accident.
And if anyone listening doesn't know what an agency is, how would you describe what an agency is?
Oh, okay. Do you ask everyone that question? Because that's quite good. You're going to get different.
It's interesting because
you're going to get different answers from
definitely.
Everyone. So an agency is an organisation that provides services to their clients. So usually they have an expertise in an area. And people tend to think of digital or marketing or creative or design. So they have a skill set that an organisation needs, and then they come to them for their expertise and they charge them for those services.
Good
How was
answer.
that?
Yeah, that was really nice, I
Yeah,
think.
thanks.
That made sense.
Yeah, so
It makes sense to you, I suppose, is the question.
So you said that you built your business. So if you could restart your career, what would you do differently this time?
Oh, that's a good one. What could I do differently this time? What, in order for me, in my business now as an agency advisor, or for our agency that I was working in before?
Now. Yeah.
Okay. I suppose the thing I would work on my network. When I came out, because my job was sort of to make sure that our organisation was running properly. So I was quite inwardly focused. I didn't really take much. I wasn't really aware of what was going on in other agencies in the market, and generally sort of building up connections or relationships with people outside of our own organisation. So if I was to go back and do something differently, I would make sure that I was making connections and building relationships outside of the business I was working in and in the market and just with people generally. What I found was really refreshing actually coming out of that and going into, solopreneur or, consultancy, advisory relationships when you're on your own. Actually, people are really kind and want to sort of make connections and build relationships. And I wasn't really open to that before. So yeah, having a slightly different mindset about making connections, because you never know when you meet someone on a project that could then be really useful for you to like 10 years later.
Yeah, networking is so important, isn't it? And
yeah.
I think it always sounds a bit scary as well, doesn't it?
It does a bit,
but
yeah.
I think the more you do it, the more you get out there, you make connections. We were talking about LinkedIn earlier.
Yeah.
The more you use that. I mean, what did we do before LinkedIn? I suppose you did have a little black book somewhere, didn't you?
But yeah. I mean, I was talking to someone the other day about, talking about little black books, like the amount of phone numbers I used to remember in my head. I can remember 2 phone numbers now, but I used to have about 50 memorized.
Wow, that's quite a skill.
Well, because when you're in sort of, I started in account management, so you've got all your clients, you've got all your suppliers, and you're sort of figuring these things out. But I think networking is sort of the word, because it makes it feel like it's quite hard. I think building connections is I find framing it that way for me makes it a bit more accessible.
Yeah.
Rather than networking, it's just sort of having an interaction with someone and then just storing that up and saving that for later if you need them or if they need you.
And the thing is, in the agency world, and I think for brands now, we've become much more open to sharing. So I think there was probably a point in time where you would never go out and go, oh, I'm having a really tough time at the moment. Is anyone else? You'd go out going, yeah, things are great, and you'd go home and cry about it afterwards that it wasn't so good.
That's so true. I think I started working in an agency in 2004, and we were sort of about 10 minutes away from where we are now in Brick Lane. And at that point, agency land and the agency industry was, as you say, very sort of protective. You didn't give away your secrets. Yeah. You didn't give away how you did things. You didn't let on that you weren't doing well. It was always sort of chest out.
Yeah.
Head up, and you presented a position of strength, whether you were actually feeling like that or not. And I think there's a much more of an openness now in the industry generally to share insights and useful bits of information and share relationships. And I think the market's just opened up in a much healthier way than it was when I was first coming through.
Definitely. Should we go all the way back though? Should we start what happened when you were at school, when you left school?
I went into full-time employment the day after I finished my GCSEs.
Wow.
I've always worked, and I've always enjoyed working. I've always enjoyed the independence of having my own money. I'm the eldest of 4. I've got 3 younger brothers, so it was always quite a busy household. And if you wanted something, you kind of had to go and figure it out for yourself. So I've always enjoyed earning my own money. And so I worked in restaurants to begin with. I started when I was 14, and when I was 16, I went full time and I worked at Pizza Express in Maidstone. That's where I was. I went straight in there, and I worked right the way through the summer. I was umming and ahhing about going back to sixth form because that was kind of what you were supposed to do. I was also looking at catering college as well, Mid Kent, and I signed up for that. So I thought I was going to go and be a restaurateur. I quite enjoyed it. At that point, it was a route that I could earn money, and it was good fun, and I was good with customers and people. And I did one day at college and realised, that wasn't for me. I did not like that at all. And then I ended up going back and trying to do A-levels, and I lasted about 2 months. I think I made it to maybe October. I was still working basically full time as well. So I was finishing sixth form and then going to work at night, and then coming in and basically falling asleep in a common room. And they asked me to make a choice, and they said, right, well, either you need to stop working and really sort of knuckle down here. And then basically they weren't going to pay me like 400 quid a week, which is what I was earning then. So I thought, well, I'm going to go and do that then. But at that point I changed tactic, and I ended up getting a job as a paper merchant. And I got a job in the post room of a paper merchant's, and that I will need to explain.
Yeah.
So basically it's sort of an entry into the printing industry. So paper merchants supply paper to printers for magazines, books, inserts, flyers, that kind of thing. So I got a job in a post room, and then worked my way up through there and became an account manager. So I was responsible for, it's a sort of an agency of sorts. So one of my big accounts was the Guinness Book of Records. So I used to buy all the paper for the covers of the Guinness Book of Records. Amazing. So I'd secure that from suppliers in Italy and Finland and Sweden, and then we deliver it, and we get it delivered over here to the printers. And we would, they would come to us to buy that because we could get better prices because we were buying much more paper than someone on their own. And that's kind of how that worked out. So that was how I ended up becoming an account manager.
And I bet there's a lot of specialism in that, in understanding about different types of paper. It's one of those things, like you just open Pandora's box, don't you, of, well, that's an industry, and then you can keep delving into the intricacies.
It's really weird. I'm actually a qualified paper merchant. I have letters after my name and everything.
Wow.
I can't remember what they are, but I did actually go and do a course at the Elephant and Castle. And I was qualified. So you have to understand the differences, the thicknesses, opacity, what you use different types of papers for, because people are coming to you for your experience, and you could build those skills up quite quickly, and you become quite knowledgeable. You sort of throw yourself into that. But I always enjoyed the relationship building side of it. And the ability to kind of solve problems for people, because that's effectively what you're doing most of the time. They ring you up and go, can you help me out with this? Can you find this? Can you source that? And then you sort of you go away and do it, and that's your responsibility.
Love it. And then what happened next?
So then I was there for about 6 years. So I started there when I was 16. By the time I was about 23, I think I left, 23, 24. Mate of mine had started they started an insert company. So in magazines, newspapers, you used to get the bits that fall out, stuff that comes through your door at the moment, door drops and stuff like that. They'd started an agency doing that, and they were a sales company effectively. So they had a few contracts to put inserts into magazines. And they rang me one day because they'd lost a load of inserts and they needed to get them reprinted, and they wanted to understand if I could source the paper for it, if I could introduce them to a printer. So I helped them solve that problem. These were two guys that I went to school with, weirdly. And then I sourced that a lot cheaper than they had been able to themselves. So then we got chatting sort of a couple of weeks later, and we realised that there might be a bit of an opportunity to set up a print management part of the inserts, because if we were selling inserts into these companies, there was an opportunity for us to print that as well and then make two margins. Mm-hmm. So they brought me on at that point to set up the print management division of that agency.
Amazing.
Which I'd never done before.
No.
And we kind of figured it out as we went.
And there was also something interesting you said there, the fact that actually it was some people that you knew from school. Yeah. And do you know what? I've come across people, actually there's people that work in my business today that I met at school that we weren't best mates, but we knew of each other. And so you're actually already building your networks now.
Oh, totally.
I think is the interesting
You're definitely going to end up running into people you went to school with or lived in your hometown or you ended up going to university with or something like that. You always sort of cross paths with it. It's amazing how small the world is.
Yeah. And even smaller with, I think, social media these days and the ability to stay in touch with people.
Definitely.
But yeah. Okay, so you're starting to set up a department in a business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we made a lot of mistakes. First job we ever did, I lost 40 grand. Because none of us really knew what we were doing, and we ended up printing. It was an 8-page booklet for a client, and we ended up printing the inside 4 pages on the outside. But we didn't even look at it, and we had them all delivered to the office. We were all excited, sort of jumping them out. It's our first order come through. We didn't really look at it properly, and we ended up getting on the train again without looking at it. Got the train all up to Manchester where the client was to show them how pleased we were with us, and they opened it up and went, "Oh, these pages are wrong." And we went, and we had to literally make it up on the spot. No, it's, that's just the test copies. We're bringing them to you. These aren't the actual ones that are going out. So then we had to go straight to the printers. Had to have them all taken apart and all put back together again.
Whoa.
In the right sort of way around. It's when you sort of, the difficulty with things like manufacturing and design, and when you've got a sort of a product at the end of it, it's very easy to kind of get things wrong along the way. But we never made that mistake again. We made plenty more mistakes and all kinds of different. But each one of those mistakes, each one of those challenges, it teaches you something else. Either something that can help you commercially, you find a new supplier which is actually a bit cheaper, or you learn something about yourself, how you manage under pressure, what you can cope with stress wise, how resilient you are to sort of challenges. All these things come through this adversity and problem solving for clients.
Yeah. And you've put in new processes, don't you? And
we did.
Did you keep that client?
We did. Yeah.
Which is also the other thing, isn't it? Because I think sometimes people think that if you go and make a big mistake like that will be the end of the road. But actually, as long as you handle it properly, it's not the end of the road normally.
As long as you confront it up and solve the problem for it, as long as it doesn't cost them any money, it doesn't cost them any time, and you go to them with solutions, people are usually, actually, you end up strengthening relationships, I find, than just if it's just always smooth sailing. Yeah.
Well, because they know that you've got their back. And actually, even if it's your fault it's gone wrong, they know that you're going to be the one to solve it. Totally. And therefore, they trust you, and they trust that I'd rather be with you than someone that might not be able to solve it and might have just left that on my doorstep as a problem. So... I bet that was a bit awkward though.
We had a few. I think you'll know this, Becky, and you guys will sort of come to learn this. When you're dealing with clients and you're working on behalf of customers, rarely things go absolutely perfect. Yeah. Something always turns up late, or it's coming wrong, or the client's late with something, or they've briefed you wrong. Like there's always these things that sort of upset the apple cart, and as you begin to, as you say, sort of fix those, you develop processes, you develop new skills, and you find a better way of doing things. And that became my strength, as it were, my ability to find a better way, either under pressure or just because it felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah. So you're 24 at this point. You're running a department that you've never done before. Nope. What happens next?
We built it. We went on a big sort of growth trajectory. We recruited a few more people in the different departments. We changed offices, so we moved out of a little office. So there was about 6 of us in a room this sort of size, which was too many. Too many grown men in a small room. And then we moved into different offices around the corner in Commercial Street, and we sort of evolved quite quickly. We brought on a lot of new titles. So we were looking after that. We had some big publishing contracts. We looked after the newspaper. Even the Standard was a big contract of ours. We had a few sort of national newspapers. So things were going well. And then the industry began to shift. So we were a contract sales house at that point. So we looked after publishers, and we sold inserts into their titles, and my job was to make sure we printed as many of the inserts we were doing as possible, because it gave us the opportunity to increase our revenue. At that point, our CEO, we started sort of looking at how people could, because people are having to pay to go into these magazines. So there was another opportunity there to not only represent the magazine, but to begin to represent clients. So at that point, we began to shift from a media sales company into a more of an agency shape, where we represented clients and we managed their budgets and bought their media for them, either in our publications or in other publications. And as we began to do that, the growth just became sort of exponential. And where we started in print, that's when we began to expand into digital and into broadcast, into TV as well.
Amazing. What a journey.
Yeah, it was good fun. And as we sort of evolved that, the company got bigger, and my department at that point was one of the better run departments, because we were a sales business. We attracted a lot of salespeople. It was a company full of salesmen. And salesmen, for all of their strengths, you know, their incredibly thick skin and their resilience, they are not the best organisers of things.
I knew what was coming there.
You knew what was coming there, didn't you? And I was the most sort of operationally minded person in the business. So I like to think how things worked and, you know, how we can make these things better. So I ended up getting, you know, as we had either we acquired a new company or we started a new team or we were trying to get a new product or something launched, my job became to have to figure out what was the best way of doing that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I became our internal consultant, as it were.
Yeah.
My job was to move around and then solve problems within different departments.
How did you realise you were good at that?
I sort of made myself redundant from my own team. By that point, I had a team of like 14 directly under me. And a couple of years before, I'd hired this a really amazing guy who was much better at my job than me. Like, he was brilliant. He had all of the things that I didn't have. And together we built a really successful department, which then he was kind of running without me, which freed me up then to be valuable to other parts of the business and able to go and do that.
Love that. Love that. It's always good to hire someone that's better than you
Always.
at doing things.
Always.
Just a quick note from me. We'd love you to hit the subscribe button. This helps us more than you might realise when it comes to growing this podcast, ensuring we can bring you the best guests possible. Thank you. Back to the episode.
Yeah, so you spoke about your strengths being that you were operationally minded and that you've like had a way of like finding your way around things. Would you say like, what was the best advice would you say like you received to become that person that you were?
I suppose it wasn't so much advice. It was more a freedom to kind of explore. Like, one of the things I'm most proud about the business that we worked in and we built this culture of kind of self-reliance. Everyone was given the space to figure things out and you know, to make mistakes and to find a better way and to kind of and create these opportunities for yourself. So it wasn't so much advice, it was more a security I was given, a culture that surrounded me that allowed me to kind of come into myself almost, and to, you know, these things are inherently in all of us. Everyone has a set of skills or a set of behaviors that allow them to perform at a certain level. If you land in the right kind of company, you get into the right kind of organizations, people around you will help you bring those out of yourself. And that's something that we try to maintain, even as we got bigger and bigger and bigger, from 5 of us to 20 of us to 100 to 200, is having a culture where people, you know, could become what we could see in them and to achieve their potential. That was the best. That was the thing I was most that helped me the most.
Love that. Love that.
Would you say just in general, like back in the times when you used to work in print or like at Pizza Express, like, do you ever miss those times or not?
Pizza Express was the best job I ever had. Today, I absolutely loved it. It was brilliant. I was 16, 17. I was a cocky little. I was a very cocky young man, and I just love being I love being in front of house. It's where I developed my kind of a lot of my people skills. You know, being a waiter or sort of being a chef or whatever, or just working with, you know, you're working with people who are usually a lot older than you. So you develop a lot of, you know, people skills, communication skills, confidence. It was something I always continued to look for as I was employing people. One of our, as we said, you know, I was saying we built this culture. We built this culture where we would basically build from the bottom. So we had, you know, if you imagine sort of our business was a triangle, sort of the very senior people, but if you look at sort of the total amount of employees, the largest part of it was sort of juniors or people who were sort of newest to their roles. Because what that allowed us to do was fill from the bottom, and then we can kind of bring everyone up and through. And one of the things we always look for, it wasn't necessarily education. It was more around, although education was, you know, incredibly important, but it was more about their attitude over aptitude. I talked a bit about this at the event, and that attitude is incredibly important. And where we found that was developed and enhanced the most in sort of in younger people as they were just sort of coming out of sixth form was if they worked in restaurants and bars. It just forces you to be better with people.
Yeah.
Because if you've got to deal with a right grumpy so-and-so,
Yeah.
and retain a smile on your face because you know your tips depend on it, it's amazing how quickly you can build those skills that make you a better account manager, a better team member, just a better communicator generally.
Yeah.
I look upon the time I had in restaurants sort of really fondly. It was kind of what shaped a lot of my transferable skills, I suppose.
Yeah, my first job was a waitress as
Was
well,
it?
and I learnt loads doing it. Because you've got to, because people sometimes don't like their food and they're going to tell
Sometimes
you.
I don't like you and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and you've got to just handle that conversation.
Yeah.
And it's really good for building those skills.
Yeah. So obviously, you've come a long way. So now you're like helping businesses and stuff like that. Do you have any stories where you truly felt like you made a moment, like someone's moment in their business that you truly helped them?
In their business, or I suppose most of my memories around sort of where I've had an impact in someone is more to do with sort of the human beings in business, either people that I've worked with or that work for me. And seeing, I've got some people that I'm still friends with now who I met when they were 18. I've seen them join as juniors and then they've come on to be senior account managers. They're running departments. I've seen them get married. I've seen them make kids and buy houses and stuff like that. And but because I was part of that and offered them, help them create a space for them to sort of fulfill their own potential, that's the stuff that I look upon most fondly. I do remember the biggest deal I did actually, but I don't remember a lot of the sort of the, I suppose, the monetary side of it or the the impact for clients. It was more the relationships that I'm more proud of, and the things that kind of sit with me, the people who work with me for a long time, and you see them sort of grow up or come into themselves. And that's the bit, the work I do now, really, even though I work as a business advisor, mostly I support owners of businesses who are looking to sort of change behaviours. Most of my job has always been about change. Like, how do we find a better way of doing this thing, or how do we find the right way of doing this? Systems and technology and stuff comes into that, but really you're dealing with human beings as much as people don't talk about it. They talk about change management, but it's really behavioural, tweaks and instructions and maneuvers. You're asking people to behave differently, and that's where a lot of my advice sits now. I help people with mindset, or thinking differently about something, or approaching it in a different way, or sticking to a set of instructions that we've kind of agreed, which eventually will establish a habit and then help them sort of build incrementally over time. And that's and it took me a long time to realise that was what I was quite good at, until I'd begun to I was forced to articulate it that way.
And your biggest challenge you've overcome?
Biggest challenge I've overcome? I mean, it was a personal one, about, what am I now, 43. So just over 3 years ago, I had a mental health breakdown. So my brain switched me off, did like a proper Control-Alt-Delete on me, just like switched me off. I was suffering at that point from chronic burnout. I was I wasn't a workaholic, but I was, because I'm empathetically minded. I'm people orientated, so I'm an empathetic person. So I tend to take the weight of a lot of people. During COVID and stuff like that, it was quite difficult. I had a young family. We had a lot of people who we were trying to look after and keep this business sort of up and afloat and still growing, because you're at that point, you're responsible for people's salaries, you're responsible for their mortgages and whether they can afford their car and stuff like that. So there was a lot of stress and pressure. And eventually I wasn't dealing with that very well. I was working the way I always worked, which is just, if I get a bit stressed or it gets a bit harder, just work a bit harder. My brain ended up switching me off, and it sort of shut me down like properly. And I was off work for about 3 or 4 months. and then had to learn how to work again. Sounds a bit ridiculous, but the way I would work would just be to work really hard and do as much as I could. Whereas I had to learn how to be a bit more strategic and a bit more, rather than diving straight in and sort of getting into the solution, to actually think a bit about the bigger picture, and be more specific and tactical about how I approach things, rather than just work as hard as you can. Massive learning curve for me. Like, I really didn't like it. I really didn't like therapy to start off with, but it was amazing. Now I'm so grateful for all of that. But what that also helped me was to understand how we could impact that, how I could take my learnings and sort of move that into the business. And actually, we began to adjust our organisation, because we were having quite a lot of burnout issues at that point, to then change the way we worked and think differently about the people that were there. So I was able to take that experience and sort of impact that. But that was probably the hardest thing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because it's quite a journey.
It's an important one. I think you know, we can all get caught up in stuff, and it took me a long time to realise that the way I was doing it was wrong. But once I had realised that, and someone helped me show, you know, the right way through, actually I became a better person. I became much better at my job, weirdly, even though I was already, I thought I was pretty good.
Yeah.
I became much better at my job. I became a better dad, better husband. Like, all of those sort of things have an impact once you begin to sort of figure some of those things out for yourself.
Yeah. And better at advising businesses now, I imagine,
Much
as
better,
well,
much
because
better.
I mean, it can happen to anyone, but I think at that top level where you are holding the weight of a company on your shoulders, and especially for like solo founders that are literally holding it on their own, or feel like they are,
it's really difficult.
It's really, they're at such high risk of that happening.
There's so much, you know, there's so much pressure that comes with, you know, when you're responsible for other people, you know, not just the client work, but when you're responsible for other people. I don't want to sort of terrify you guys either, where you're sort of just entering into this. But I think it's good to come in with that mindset. I think there's what really impresses me about this sort of the generation coming into work is they wouldn't tolerate a lot of the things that kind of we had to a little bit. It was this work hard, play hard thing. And I think the world has evolved. One of the amazing, I mean, COVID was awful for all kinds of reasons, but one of the good things about that is I think it's fast forwarded the way lots of organisations think about themselves. And a lot of the work I do now is to kind of helping organisations and businesses adjust to that reality of having, you know, having a proper sense of purpose, really understanding the impact you provide, how to articulate your value for customers and organisations and for your team and the people you work with. That's a really important sort of part of what I do now.
Yeah, I think mental behaviour is like something really important nowadays, especially for like people my age, because we have like exams coming up and things like that, and it like puts people in like under so much stress. So because you went through something similar to that, what advice would you have for people going through something like a mental breakdown?
I mean, yeah, mental health issues can hit us at any point in time, at any point in our lives. I hadn't appreciated how unwell I was until it's finally caught me out. But if you look back, I've been behaving like that since I was about 15. And I suppose the first thing you can do is first thing to do anything like that is to acknowledge it for yourself. Like, do I feel stressed out? Well, try and come out of your own sort of whatever you're going through at the moment and just observe your behaviour and think about how you're doing. The next thing is to sort of go and talk to someone, anyone, a mate, your mum and dad, a teacher. I was going to say geezers down the pub, but you're not there yet. But having that, being able to sort of bring that up, and I think there is much more openness to people bringing that kind of stuff up now. And then there will always be, you know, if you're stressed about this assignment, this bit of homework or project or something you've got to deliver at that moment, and that's where the focus of that is. It's very rarely that thing. It's usually a load of stuff, a combination of things that are going on at that moment. Like for me, it was because, you know, we were losing quite a lot of money at the agency. My kids were really small. COVID had just happened, so I had all of these different things going on that were actually affecting me. And I think we tend to focus on, it's this exam pressure. It's the focus I've got, but it's probably just because it's being sort of pinpointed into that one moment, and you're putting too much pressure on that individual thing. I mean, again, this isn't good for cause, but you're sitting opposite someone who has no A levels, no degree. I have 5 GCSEs, I think. I've got the important ones. I've got English and maths. But it was whilst I love school, I really enjoyed it. but I enjoyed the social aspect of it. I enjoyed the being with my mates every day. I could do the academic side of it, but the value that I got from school was sort of relationships and some of those skills that I could then take into work and into other stuff. There's a journey available. Like I think the apprenticeships that you guys have got on offer now is incredible, and I think a lot of I help people employ younger talent now. I've employed. I was trying to work it out before I went to the thing. I reckon I've employed or been in like well over 200 or 300 interviews.
Yeah.
We've employed a lot of people and been in, and seen all those kind of things, and for me, it's those. If you're into the academic side and you want to continue learning, like I think when people didn't know what they wanted to do, they went to university. But it's as easy to go into work and figure out what you want to do. Just your first job doesn't mean that's going to be your last job, or it's going to be something you do forever. It's just something to sort of get experience, earn a bit of money, and then bounce around. Like there is opportunities. I think there's so much pressure put on people sort of coming to the end of school to like, you've got to get these exam results, you've got to go to university. Otherwise, like we didn't employ grads. We didn't specifically go out and employ graduates because typically grads come with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because they've been to university. University tells them, well, you've got a degree, you can earn more money. But I'm talking to someone who if I've got talking to a guy who's 22, one person spent the last 3 years at uni, one person spent the last 3 years working in an office or in a restaurant or whatever, probably going to take the person who's got 3 years work experience over someone who's been at uni at 3 years. Like for most organisations, that's more valuable, unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or something where you need that bit. Work experience is much better for businesses than a degree in certain industries. I think if you're going to be a designer, you've probably got to have quite a strong design background. But I also know guys who started as runners in Soho, and now they run huge organisations. They didn't go to, it's not the only route. And I think it's often presented as this is your only route to employment or, being a valued employee.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. So having sat through 200-300 interviews, what's the most important thing, do you think, especially as a young person? Because I often see someone that's just come out of school sitting in an interview and they're a bit like, there's not much I can tell you. And I'm like, yes, you can. But what would you say?
I think try and communicate, like your ability to communicate how you feel, what you think, what your opinion is to another human being is one of the biggest skills you can kind of have. And in an interview, that's all you're doing. Like if you're coming into an entry level job, all you're bringing is your attitude at that point. All right, you've got to be able to read and write. Like that's probably a prerequisite. But beyond that, it's you like asking questions. Some of the things like what is this business about? How do you make money? Is an amazing question to ask a business. Very few people ask that. Like what's your commercial structure? How do you make money? Because ultimately that's what all companies are there for. Like what's your purpose? What do you care about? Tell me about your values. How did you come to get to these values in your organization? If you can be inquisitive, that shows that you're interested, and then it shows you're willing to take on that information and then sort of grow as an individual. And that's what organisations are looking for sort of younger people. I don't really care. But I want you to sort of come in hungry and sort of willing to learn and to get involved and to challenge us a little bit as well, and to think about, is this the best way? Is there a better way? Have you ever thought about that? Have you tried this? Asking questions is probably the way you can stand out, but asking interesting questions, not ones you've just got from like, what are interesting questions to ask at interviews? Don't just go on ChatGPT and do that. Actually sort of dig into their website and go, well, why do I want to work here? There's as much of this as like you're interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. Like you're looking to see whether you and obviously there's an element of privilege that comes with that. Sometimes you just need a job. But, if this is something you're really interested in, you're trying to get into, you want to look at to see whether that's right for you as well, because you don't get many opportunities to work at great companies, but if once you can find one, honestly, you'll never forget it. Like, you wouldn't imagine working at Pizza Express when you were 16 is sort of someone's dream job, but honestly, I loved it.
Yeah.
But also I looked really fondly at the time when we were sort of growing our agency and we were in that real scrappy phase. It's some of the best opportunities and some of the best times I've had in my life. It was incredible, but you couldn't, it'd be really difficult to articulate that. You have to feel it. And a lot of sort of getting into work is feeling that stuff's right for you. But you can only really understand how you feel about something or how they feel about you by asking questions, being inquisitive, and trying to figure that out for yourself. So yeah, asking questions, short answer.
Yeah, curiosity, love
definitely.
it.
What would you say is like the biggest misconception of running an agency?
That you earn loads of money and you get loads of time.
Yeah.
People think people who own businesses earn loads of money. Not true. And that once you've got big teams, that your life becomes easier. Inherently, it becomes harder. Like getting people to behave in the right way and the way you want them to behave. Even in like entering information into the computer system, putting bookings on, like filling out the CRM, getting people to behave in ways is really difficult. So I think that's a misconception, or that starting a business is is an easy thing to do. It's incredibly difficult. Most people don't start. You've got to be sort of an entrepreneur requires a very sort of quite a specific mindset. Anyone could be an entrepreneur. Everyone has the potential to be it, but it requires you to have quite a specific mindset, a really thick skin. You've got to be incredibly resilient to be an entrepreneur, and sort of a willingness to kind of jump at opportunities. And that's not for everyone. It was never something that I was never interested in running my own business until recently. I was much more comfortable helping other people run theirs. Weirdly, it's kind of what I'm still doing, but I'm kind of doing it under my own. I'm doing it under my own banner now. But that was what I was always enjoyed, being the number two to the person running the organisation. Good organisations usually have a visionary leader, and then they have a team of implementers around them. I've always been very much an implementer, but you have to be a visionary to kind of run your own agency and run your own business, and it requires quite a lot of discipline and a real sort of mindset and an incredibly thick skin. And the misconception is then that this gives you all these opportunities, whereas actually it comes with quite a lot of stress.
Yeah, definitely. It means also, I find you run at a pace where the highs and the lows don't feel that different to each other, because you have to be able to cope with both. So we were talking about this recently. We actually have just finished our best quarter ever in the agency.
Yeah.
So you'd think, oh my word, we're on the biggest high, but my eye's already on the next 2 quarters or 3 quarters, thinking, how are we going to make sure we keep this up? How are we going to fill in what we're missing revenue-wise, etc.? So you end up not ever getting particularly high, but also when bad things happen, you don't get particularly low, because you're like, I need to get back on my A game, because we've got to be able to keep delivering.
Yeah. You don't get to enjoy the sort of in the way that the team sort of get to enjoy those big highs, because you're already on to the next thing, because you have to be.
Yeah.
For all the latest marketing and brand news, follow the Drum Mag on Instagram.
Would you say you've always been that kind of person, like focusing less on a monetary value and focusing more on like human behaviors and stuff?
No. I was money obsessed. Absolutely. I was in it for a BMW and a Rolex as soon as I could sort of earn money. What I quickly realised was once I'd got some of those things, that they didn't really matter. But I think that comes from sort of growing up. I think there's nothing wrong with being sort of orientate. But money for me gave me independence. It allowed me to do what I wanted to do. If I wanted to buy more clothes, different car, I bought a flat when I was 19. It allowed me to do lots of things that I wouldn't been otherwise able to do. The problem with that comes in when that becomes your only sort of purpose, because you just end up making bad decisions. And that was partly I was, part of my breakdown was because I still had the mentality of, right, if I work hard, I'll earn more money. But at that point, I didn't really need to. I was married, I had a young family. Like, I had everything I'd always wanted, but I was still, the only way I knew how to work was sort of that relentless attitude to try and earn as much money as I could. And eventually, and what I came to realise was that actually that wasn't my skill. I was much better at sort of building people up around me and helping them find their own way. But I was certainly, in my sort of late teens, throughout my 20s probably, I was definitely I was focused on how much money I could earn, but so that it would give me a level of independence.
When do you think you realised that you were better at helping people than focusing on monetary values?
I mean, there's always a focus. I suppose there's two sort of monetarily values you can focus, like how much you're earning or how much you're making for the company. My ability to make money for our company was what gave me status, power, authority sort of in the organisation. That was what helped me become a director, because I was able to make a lot of money for the business. So being commercially minded and understand how to make money is an incredibly good skill to have. If you're only focused to make money for the business is to make money for yourself, that's when you can come cropper a little bit, because it makes you a bit selfish in your behaviour. Certain organisations where that's like, if you're in a sales business, that's what you want from everyone. But as you're starting to build an agency where the important part is the work you're doing for a client and your ability to make money. So we do good work for clients that allows us to charge the right amount of money for it, and that's how we make our money. That's an important skill. The easiest way to do great work for clients and be able to charge money for it is to have a really good team of people delivering it. So that was what I became quite good at. And that's how I figured that out.
And in agency world, it's such a consultative sell, isn't it? You're not selling boxes on shelves where everyone gets the same thing. Trying to really understand what a client wants, what they need, and actually often what a client wants isn't normally what they need.
No,
so you then
not at all.
need to take a client on an education process to go, I know you've come here saying you want X. Actually understanding your problem, we think you need Y, and you need to get them to understand that and take them on that journey. And that's that in itself requires the skill of a team.
Absolutely, yeah. You can't you can't do these things on your own. So and understand that, like, the sooner you can sort of begin to understand that and understand where your skill set fits into sort of all of the different cogs of this machine that's delivering this work for clients, is definitely the important part of that.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Would you say like having that good network around you really helps you?
Of sort of in the set, definitely, yeah. Whether you guys play on a football team or a rugby team or something like that, you know what it's like when you have a good moment and you can celebrate that with loads of other people. Much better than when it's on your own.
Yeah.
And having a great team of people around you, building a great team of people around you is an amazing feeling. That's what makes it all sort of, that shared experience is much more powerful than anything you can do as an individual.
What do you think about where, since COVID, we've gone to much more remote styles of working? What are your views on that for the future? And have you got any thoughts on how that's changing?
I've got a kind of, where I'm seeing that in my clients and agencies that I'm involved with, is kind of two camps that are doing it really well. There's either those camps who have there's those camps that have decided, no, we're in the office, this is how we work. And that allows those agencies to then build a really sort of a culture that can kind of grow organically because people are all in the same room together. You don't have to be as specific about your culture. It kind of happens because everyone's in the same room. Challenge with that is it limits your recruitment because people aren't willing to commute in the way they would recruit. So if you're starting an agency in Maidstone, you can probably only recruit like within about 30 miles outside of that. Whereas if you're a remote agency based out of Maidstone, you can recruit anywhere you want. You can go as far as you like to recruit people, but you have to be much more specific and intentional about the culture you build, and doing that remotely. And I think that's the big challenge for a lot of agencies that were all in the office pre-COVID. They've come out of that now and are now working either hybrid or fully remote, but they're not intentional enough about their culture. because culture's it's a real sort of tricky thing. It can sort of really slip through your fingers quite quickly, or it can turn into something you don't want it to quite quickly as well. So a lot of the work I do with remote agencies is on how they can be more specific about purpose, values, mission, how people align with that, and then employing the right kind of people to help them support that sort of vision and journey. Whereas if you're all in the office, you can kind of do that by osmosis. Like people are sitting around a table, they're having lunch together, they're having a cup of tea, they're going to the pub afterwards. You can kind of do that a bit more, tangibly, because you're all in the same room.
Yeah, you just learn, don't you?
Learn. You just figure it out by sitting next.
Feeling it around you.
I think the challenge that I'm seeing for your sort of cohort coming through is what agencies haven't quite figured out yet is how to onboard and train and develop new joiners remotely quite quickly. There's not many agencies that I've seen that are doing that really well. It's a really hard thing to do. The way we used to train our juniors is when they started, you'd sit with your line manager and you sit basically on their lap for 2 months and you'd learn as you go by, you'd learn by shadowing. You can't really shadow remotely. But I'm seeing with the rise of, if a company's quite intentional about their purpose and they've got a good understanding of what it is and how they do it, and they've begun to sort of document that and train people like that, it's much easier to make video. Anyone can make a Loom video now and explain that. And I think agencies who can build those training banks, even having chatbots and stuff like that. I've seen some companies do. They plug all of their learning material into chatbots. So if you're sitting at home on your own, you don't know to do something, chuck something in the chatbot and it'll kind of give you the answer rather than you having to go to your manager all the time and ask those questions of, do you know how to do this? There are ways that technology can help with that now. And I think, again, for you guys going into careers, look out for that sort of stuff. It's a great question to answer in an interview. What's my first 90 days going to look like? How am I going to be trained?
Yeah.
Who's going to train me? What's your process for doing this?
And I think going back to your Pizza Express as a first job, having an experience of being around people, I think as early as you can in your career and soaking that up and realising, even you won't realise it at the time, but the skills you're gaining.
Oh, massively.
Because then if you do end up going and doing a job where you're working from your bedroom at home, you're limiting your ability to learn some of those skills. So it's how can you make sure you're picking them up somewhere else and being really intentional about it.
Yeah, and again, I think it's where that sort of, you're not necessarily, uni's going to feel a bit like school. So you're only going to pick up a lot of the same skills you've already picked up a lot of skills socially and sort of and your ability to communicate. But as you say, getting into work, any work, wherever you can, however you can, is going to give you experiences that you just won't get anywhere else. You just won't.
Any final questions for Tom?
I just want to talk about the use of AI at the moment. How do you see AI shaping the future of digital agencies?
Well, big question. Maybe it's just sort of pin that into internally to start off with. I think AI there was a study came out this week, and I think 94% of agencies are using AI currently in the workplace, but only 14% of them are using it with some kind of strategic plan or intention. Everyone sort of knows that they should, but they don't really know how they can or what they should be doing. And there isn't that. I think people haven't really articulated well enough the problem they're trying to solve. They're going, we need AI. Rather than going, right, we've got this problem. Can AI help us? Or actually, do we just need a better process or workflow? This is a big, same conversation you're having. So it's going to be transformative in that it's going to take away the donkey work that we used to have to do. If someone said, right, I need you to go and research. We've got a client pitch in 2 weeks where we're selling washing machines to this part of the country. Right, go and find out all you can about that part of the country and everything you can about the washing machine market. Someone have to go and do that. Whereas now I can go, there you go, it's done. It take me 10 minutes. I can, and that sort of stuff is where people can really feel the benefits of it. The value for I think the value for individuals is you're not going to then get caught up in doing the really slow, sort of monotonous, task-orientated stuff. What clients are going to look for is, what agents, successful businesses are going to look for is people who can understand how to get rid of those sort of repetitive, monotonous tasks and then provide the value and the insight. So if you go away and do that research, that's one part of the job. The bit that the human being adds to that is my insights into how we market this product in this sector. That's where the value for the client comes. It isn't in that you've done that research. I think a lot of agencies get caught up in that they sell the research rather than the insights and the value, or how we're going to make this difference. So AI allows you to do that a lot faster. But there's a colleague of mine called Tina who we use for AI. She's got a really nice formula, sort of human, AI, human. So human provides context, AI does a lot of the donkey work, and the human defines the final bit of content. I think when agencies can figure that out, that's when they're going to really succeed. One of the skills I encourage all of my agencies for at the moment is, when you used to sort of employ people and come back to interviews again, obviously, can they read, write, speak? Those are your basics. But we used to look at where people's Excel skills, like agencies, this is the one thing no one will ever tell you, agencies are built on Excel. They might have all these fancy bits of technology and stuff like that, but digital agencies are built on Excel. You're laughing because you know it's true.
The man speaks the truth.
Right? If you're good at Excel, you can have a career in digital media. No worries at all. Like, it doesn't matter what you know about marketing. Like, if you can do Excel, you're going to be all right. And no one really talks about that, which is quite funny.
I've never heard anyone say it, but it's so true.
It's absolutely true.
It's true.
The other thing is if you can prompt. The new thing is if you can prompt. If you can figure out how to prompt articulately and with some real laying in layers and layers of context to improve that output, you're going to do well, because agencies all have this. Every organisation in the world is going to have this. I really enjoyed listening to your man at ScoreApp,
Daniel Priestley.
Yeah, who's incredible. And there is so many opportunities for people coming into the market now to help organisations digitise themselves. AI is going to be where a lot of that happens. So if you can come into businesses with an interest, well, not necessarily, you haven't got to be like, and you haven't got to be techie in any way. Like, I'm not techie. I'm just interested in figuring out, is there a better way? What can I do to use that? Sometimes the answer is going to be Excel. Sometimes the answer is going to be ChatGPT. Sometimes the answer is going to be a phone call. I've got all of these tools at my disposal to solve those problems. That was a much longer answer to your question again. I'll just keep doing that, actually, mate. Sorry.
No, but it was all good context. I also like that you said as well, a phone call is an option. I still love just picking up the phone and talking to people. Sometimes more than a video call. I like the old school.
Oh, and people respond to it. It depends on the type of person you're trying to, you're trying to chat to. It could be a voice note, it could be a phone call, it could be a bit of code that you've written, it could be a way of detailing a whole new database. Having these sort of variable skills is really important.
Yeah, picking the right one for the right moment.
Yeah.
Any final questions for Tom?
I think that's it. Everything's been answered.
Yeah. So my last one then, if you were here today as a 17-year-old, what do you wish you could pass back as a bit of knowledge?
What do I wish I could pass back as a bit of knowledge? I think be more open to sort of building connections, I think is one thing. To just try and chill out a little bit. Like, I was in a real rush to achieve as much as I could as quickly as I could. And that sort of created an appetite which was quite difficult to feed afterwards. I missed out on lots of opportunities because I was always working. I never went travelling. I never did I didn't many experiences beyond sort of working to start off with, because I was so fixated on, whether I could buy this or whether I could buy that. And all these things help you eventually. But I suppose, my my openness to making more sort of business connections and just a willingness to sort of chill out and slow down a little bit, and like you've got loads of time. It might not feel like you have, but you've got plenty of time to do it all.
Yeah, love that. Amazing. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure.
You have been fantastic, Tom. Ruhan, you've been brilliant
Thank
as
you.
my co-host.
Really good questions. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Ruhan. It was really good.
Thank you.
Really good questions. And that's the point. You don't want to hear what I want to ask. We want to know what Ruhan wants to know. So
That's good.
thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you on a future episode of Behind the Future. That concludes another brilliant episode of Behind the Future. Thank you so much for listening. You can listen back to other episodes on YouTube or your podcast platform of choice. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, as that will help us to grow this podcast, ensuring we can get the best guests on here for you to learn from. You can also follow us on socials, linked in the show notes for exclusive content. See you on the next episode.